Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Today's story doesn't begin with a fight. It doesn't begin with screaming or cheating or even a slammed door. It begins with a bowl of cereal. Cheerios. No milk. She left me the box. Not a note. Not a good morning. Just an open box of dry cereal on the kitchen counter. And next to it, her wedding ring, sitting face down like it was ashamed of itself. I stood there in silence, staring at the saddest breakfast setup imaginable, and I knew something wasn't just off. It was gone. See, 7 days earlier, my wife stopped talking to me. Completely. Not in a loud, dramatic, I hate you way. No, in the quiet, deliberate way someone ghosts a stranger they met on a dating app. At first, I thought it was one of those moods. You know the kind, the quiet processing, the I'm overwhelmed with life right now type of thing. I gave her space. I asked if she was okay. She said, I'm fine, and went right back to doom scrolling on her phone like I was the neighbor's wallpaper. But it wasn't space she wanted. It was distance. Cold, silent, impossible to reach distance. By day 3, I realized I was talking more to the cat than to her. And the cat is a rescue who hates me. Day 4. She didn't come home until 1 a.m. Day 5. She didn't come home at all. And through it all, no explanations, no apologies, not even a fake excuse. Just, don't wait up, followed by radio silence. She wasn't just ignoring me. She was phasing me out of her life like I was a trial subscription she forgot to cancel. But here's where it gets strange. On day 7, while I was trying to decide whether to eat dry cereal for dinner or cry into a sleeve of saltines, I got a text from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Tessa. Not an ex. Not a fling. Just someone I used to know. Someone who once laughed at my dumb jokes and said I had resting sad eyes in the nicest way possible. Her message? Random question. If you could be anywhere but home right now, where would you go? That's when the idea hit me. No, not revenge. Not even rebellion. Escape. Within an hour, I booked 2 round-trip tickets to a beach town I couldn't pronounce and messaged Tessa. Want to go somewhere no one knows our names? She replied with a single word. God, yes. The next morning, I left a sticky note on the counter. You ignored me for 7 days. So I'm gone for 4. With someone who sees me. I didn't expect her to care. But 2 hours into the flight, my phone buzzed. Then again. And the voicemail she left? Yeah, they didn't sound indifferent anymore. By the time the plane touched down, I'd listened to 3 of her voicemails. Not out of curiosity, more like habit. I'm the kind of guy who listens even when I shouldn't. That's been my curse since high school. The first one was brief. Shaky. Hey, are you okay? The second sounded irritated, like I'd broken some unspoken rule by leaving. You didn't even tell me where you're going? The third had her voice cracking, almost whispering. Are you with someone? That was the moment I smiled. Not a smug smile. Not satisfaction. Just that tiny curl of the mouth when a man realizes he's not invisible anymore. But that moment didn't last. Tessa was already waiting outside the terminal. No suitcase. Just a single backpack and a hoodie that said, "Leave me alone," which was ironic, considering she was the first person to actually not leave me alone in weeks. She looked exactly like I remembered, a little tired, a little sarcastic, and always slightly skeptical of everything. Nice choice, she said, eyeing the coastal town around us. It smelled like fish and regret. You bring all your existential breakdowns to places like this? I laughed, but not because it was funny. I laughed because it was the first time in a week I wasn't swallowing silence like it was my job. We rented bikes, ditched our phones in the motel safe, except mine, which I kept for emergencies, and, curiosity, and spent that first day talking about everything but our relationships. She didn't ask why I left. I didn't ask what she'd been running from. It was like 2 wounded strangers agreeing not to pick each other's scabs. That night, we sat on the beach with overpriced instant noodles and watched the tide roll in. She told me about her job, some chaotic startup where the coffee machine caught fire twice. I told her about Vivian, about the silence, about the ring next to the cereal box. Tessa didn't react dramatically. She just said, she wanted you to notice her absence. You just beat her to it. It hit me harder than I thought, because maybe that's what it was. Maybe the silence wasn't neglect. Maybe it was a power move. A slow erasure to make me beg, to make me panic, to see if I'd crawl. And when I didn't, when I left, she started dialing. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls. then 14, then 17. My phone was vibrating like it was trying to escape the drawer. I checked the last voicemail. I wish I hadn't. Vivian was crying. Really crying. I didn't think you'd actually go, Marshall. I didn't think you'd just leave. Please. I don't even know who you're with. Can we talk? Please. I made a mistake. She made a mistake. That's what she called it. A mistake. As if disappearing emotionally for 7 days was an accidental typo. As if treating me like a roommate with no name could be shrugged off with a couple tears and a please. Tessa saw my face. She begging. I nodded. She took a slow sip of her coffee. That's not an apology. That's a disruption. You were silent long enough to scare her. That's all this is. I wanted her to be wrong. I wanted to believe Vivian missed me. Not just her control, not just her rhythm, not just the comfort of knowing I'd always be right there. But something in Tessa's voice made too much sense. It hurt to admit. By nightfall, Vivian had sent me a photo. Our bedroom. My drawer. Wide open. Empty. Then the message came. If you don't come back tomorrow, I'll assume it's over. My hands started shaking. Tessa didn't say a word. She just sat next to me on that damp motel balcony and let me stare at the screen like it held my fate. But the next morning, I didn't pack. I didn't respond. And that's when Vivian sent the real bombshell. Something I never expected. Something that made me question if I'd even known the woman I married. The message she sent wasn't what you're thinking. It wasn't a selfie. It wasn't a come home, I miss you apology. It was a screenshot of a bank statement, specifically our joint account. And in the corner, a pending transaction, $4,800 transferred out, labeled rental deposit. I read it twice, then a third time, as if the numbers would change if I blinked enough. I just sat there in that cheap motel room, my heart pounding like I'd swallowed a blender. Tessa was brushing her hair, humming softly in the background, completely unaware that my marriage had just quietly detonated on a 6.2-inch screen. There was no note with the screenshot. No context. No, I'm leaving, or I'm sorry. Just silence. Again. And that was worse than the voicemails. See, crying means regret. Apologies mean guilt. But silence? That means she didn't think I deserved an explanation. She was moving forward, full speed, no rearview mirror. And I was just the dust left behind. I must have looked pale because Tessa stopped mid-hum and asked, did she send another guilt trap? I didn't answer right away. I just showed her the phone. She blinked once. Wow. She's serious, huh? I guess so, I whispered. That's a security deposit. She's moving out. Tessa's voice was calm, almost clinical. She expected you to crawl back. When you didn't, she called the landlord. I nodded, barely breathing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on that lumpy mattress with my eyes wide open, listening to the faint hum of the fridge and the crashing waves outside. My marriage wasn't unraveling anymore. It had already unraveled. I just didn't realize it until she pulled the last thread and let it all fall to the floor. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I got up and opened the motel door. The beach was empty. The sky was bleeding stars. I walked until my feet hit wet sand and sat down like some rom-com reject, clutching my phone like it still connected me to a life that no longer wanted me. I didn't call her. I didn't text. But I did open my photo gallery. And that's where it happened. Buried between vacation photos and screenshots of memes I'd never sent her, there was one photo I didn't recognize. A blurry shot taken from inside a car. The timestamp? 2 nights before I left. Vivian in the driver's seat. And a man in the passenger seat. His hand on her thigh. I stared at it, my mind trying to make excuses. Maybe it was old. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But deep down I knew. I just knew. I hadn't been crazy. I hadn't been dramatic. I hadn't been paranoid. I had been erased, because she'd already replaced me. When I finally crawled back into bed, Tessa was still awake. She didn't ask what happened. She just looked at me, saw the photo in my hand, and softly said, "She's been gone longer than 7 days, hasn't she?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent Vivian a message. Not a threat. Not a scream. Not even anger. Just 10 words. If you want out, just say so. I'm done guessing. She responded instantly, but not with words. She sent a video. A video that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about our last few months, and show me just how far her betrayal really went. When I tell you my hands were shaking as I tapped the video, I'm not exaggerating. Not metaphorically. Literally shaking. like I just stepped into cold water and couldn't get my breath right. My thumb hovered over the play button for way too long. My heart was already racing, screaming at me not to look. But you can't unsee something once it's sent. And curiosity, especially when you're desperate for closure, can feel like a drug you know is going to ruin you, but you hit it anyway. The screen went black for a second, then the camera settled. I immediately recognized her voice. Vivian. But not the version I knew. Not the half-silent, emotionally blank woman who left cereal and a ring on the counter like they were equal in meaning. No, this was a version of her I hadn't seen in months, laughing, talking fast, teasing. Her voice was upbeat, flirty, free, and she wasn't talking to me. The camera angle made it obvious. She didn't know she was being recorded. It was from the dashboard of a car, angled perfectly toward her. Same guy from the blurry photo. I paused it and looked closer. He had a tattoo on his wrist, the kind you only notice when someone reaches for the gear shift. I'd never seen him before. He didn't look like someone she worked with. Too casual, too comfortable. And the way he was leaning in as she laughed, it made me feel sick. The video was only 19 seconds long, but that was all it needed to be. She said, "He's so boring lately. I can't even fake it anymore. I need something real again. Not this sad, slow, clingy thing, you know?" Then she reached over and grabbed his hand. Same one that had been on her thigh in the earlier photo. She wasn't even talking about someone else. She was talking about me. Like I was a phase she had finally outgrown. Like I was a mistake she didn't regret, just dismissed. When it ended, I stared at the black screen for a long time. Not because I didn't get it, but because I got it too well. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just lying. It was dehumanizing. She didn't even argue with me. She didn't give me the dignity of anger or confrontation. She just peeled me off like old wallpaper, like I'd started to fade and didn't match the new design of her life. I didn't show Tessa. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want her to see me that way, reduced to a punchline in someone else's car ride. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't write some emotional breakup post on social media. I sat on the motel balcony and wrote a list. A real one. Pen and paper. A list of everything I gave up for Vivian. The friends I lost because she didn't like them. The job promotion I declined because she wasn't ready to move cities. The holidays I spent with her family while mine got used to excuses. By the time I finished, the page looked like a confession letter from a man who finally realized he'd been digging his own grave with someone else's hands. And then I did something strange. I called my sister. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Not because of any big fallout, but because Vivian had always made her feel too opinionated. That night, I told her everything. And she listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "I told you so." When I finally finished, she said something I'll never forget. "You were never too boring, Marsh. You were just too safe for someone addicted to chaos." I couldn't sleep again. But this time, I wasn't restless. I was awake with clarity. Vivian had moved on. Quietly, selfishly, carelessly. But I wasn't going to chase her. Not anymore. What I didn't expect was what happened the next morning, when I opened my inbox to find a shared calendar invite from Vivian. Not an apology. Not a request. An invite. To our divorce mediation. There's something disturbingly impersonal about receiving a calendar invite to your own divorce. No message. No emotion. Just a cold, clinical subject line. Mediation prep, property, and financial discussion. Like we were business partners dissolving a failed startup. Not two people who once carved their initials into a coffee table after drinking too much boxed wine. I stared at it for a long time, letting it sit in my inbox like a rotting fruit I wasn't ready to touch. Vivian didn't even bother with a heads up. "No, I'm filing. No, we need to talk." Just a Google Calendar notification with a Zoom link and her lawyer's email in the CC field. That was the moment it became real. Not the cereal box. Not the voicemails. Not the video. This was the cleanest cut she'd made yet. Like she wanted to erase me with a single digital stroke. I didn't reply. Not right away. I spent the rest of the day walking the cliffs with Tessa. We didn't talk much. I think she could tell something had shifted. Not just in the relationship, but in me. Something had cracked open and started leaking, and I didn't have the strength to hold it back anymore. We stopped at this little cafe with mismatched chairs and a crooked chalkboard menu. Tessa ordered peppermint tea. I ordered a grilled cheese, which I didn't even want. I just needed to chew something so I wouldn't scream. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You know what's funny? I shook my head. You're not even mad. You're just tired. And she was right. I wasn't angry. I wasn't devastated. I was exhausted. Like someone who'd been trying to swim to shore for too long and finally realized the tide wasn't going to change. I told her about the calendar invite. She didn't flinch. Then let her have it, she said. Let her be the one to throw it all away. But do it on your terms. My terms. That phrase stuck with me. I'd spent the entire relationship adjusting, compromising, staying quiet, giving space, making peace. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd been so focused on preserving the relationship that I didn't realize I'd shrunk to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Later that evening, I went back to the motel and finally opened the calendar invite. I added one comment. Just one line. Make sure you bring the video too. Your lawyer deserves the full picture. I hit send. I wasn't trying to blackmail her. I wasn't even trying to scare her. I just wanted her to know that I knew, that I saw her, that I wasn't the oblivious doormat she thought she'd quietly walk away from. 15 minutes later, she called. I didn't answer. Then came the text. Why are you doing this? Can we just talk first? I replied, you've had 7 days and 1,000 chances to talk. Now it's my turn. No response. I tossed the phone on the nightstand and walked outside. The sun was setting, turning the ocean orange and purple and something in between. Tessa joined me a few minutes later. She didn't ask questions. She just handed me a cold root beer and sat beside me like we'd done this for years. After a few minutes, she whispered, so, what's next for you? I didn't have an answer. Because for the first time in years, my future wasn't tied to someone else's schedule. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, I got an email from Vivian's lawyer. And it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't about assets, or the house, or our car. It was about evidence. Apparently, Vivian had already prepared a legal claim against me. Something I had no idea was coming. Something that would flip the script entirely. When I first opened the email from Vivian's lawyer, I expected something cold, procedural, dry. Maybe a PDF titled Mutual Agreement Draft 1, or a polite list of shared belongings to divide. I was mentally prepared to argue over the couch, the coffee table, maybe the espresso machine she never learned to use. What I wasn't prepared for was an accusation. At the top of the email, bolded in all caps, were the words, client alleges coercive behavior, potential emotional manipulation, and withdrawal of marital support. I stared at those words like they were written in another language. I read them again, and again, until the meaning finally sank in. She was accusing me of emotional manipulation. Me, the man who made heart-shaped pancakes during her anxiety spells. The man who gave up 2 Thanksgiving invitations from his own family because her parents didn't like complicated travel. The man who sat in silent agony for a week, literally counting the seconds of her silence, because he didn't want to make her uncomfortable by demanding answers. She was accusing me of harming her emotionally, and not in a vague, subjective way. In a legal way. The email made it clear. She wasn't just walking away. She was trying to frame the narrative, rewrite the past so that she was the abandoned one, the gaslit one, the victim. My mouth went dry. My hands started sweating. I printed the email. I needed to see it on paper. Somehow it felt more real that way, more insane. I paced the motel room, the floor creaking under my nervous steps, rereading each sentence like I was checking for some cruel joke hidden between the lines. Then, almost on instinct, I pulled out my notebook, the one I started when the silence first began. I flipped through the pages, timestamps of every day she ignored me, moments she walked past without a word, every small act of emotional disappearance I recorded like I was collecting evidence I never intended to use. Now it felt like the only thing standing between me and some twisted legal trap. Tessa came back from her morning walk, just as I was photocopying everything at the front desk. She looked confused. What happened? I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her everything. The accusations. The spin. The fact that Vivian was trying to turn her own neglect into my supposed abuse. Tessa didn't blink. She listened. Then, after a pause, she leaned against the counter and said softly, she's not just trying to leave. She's trying to win. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This wasn't about love fading or marriages ending. Vivian was preparing to rewrite history in a courtroom. She wasn't content with being done. She wanted to come out clean, righteous, untouched. And in doing so, she was willing to destroy my character. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because I wasn't the only one who had been keeping receipts. Tessa looked at me that night, after hours of silence between us, and said something I never expected. I didn't want to get involved in your mess. I really didn't. But I need to show you something. She pulled out her old phone. Not the one she used now, an older one. Cracked, beat up, barely held together by a red case with a faded cat sticker on the back. She powered it on and opened her photo gallery. I used to follow Vivian on Instagram, she said. Way before you guys got married. We had mutual friends. She scrolled through screenshots. Dozens of them. Photos Vivian had posted and deleted months ago. Captioned selfies. Beach pics. Nights out. Hashtags like hashtag free at last and hashtag married not dead. Comments from the same guy who appeared in the video she sent me. Flirtatious replies. Fire emojis. Inside jokes. All from months before I booked the vacation. All while I thought we were still trying. Still in love. Still working on things. Vivian's been laying the groundwork for this for a long time, Tessa whispered. She wanted you to crack first. She wanted you to walk away, lose it, retaliate. So she could play innocent. I sat there, holding the cracked phone in one hand and the printed email in the other. And for the first time since the whole nightmare began, I didn't feel sad. I felt betrayed on a level I didn't know existed. She hadn't just replaced me. She hadn't just erased me. She had built a trap, brick by digital brick, hoping I'd step right into it blind. And maybe I almost did. But now I had proof. And I was going to use it, not for revenge, not to hurt her, but to finally, reclaim the truth. The next morning, I woke up different. Not stronger, not calmer, not even hopeful, just clear. That foggy haze I'd been living in since Vivian started ignoring me had finally burned off. My sadness wasn't gone, but it had been replaced by something sharper, more focused. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted my side of the story to exist. I wanted it documented, undeniable, and untwisted. So I started building. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way. No secret USBs or dramatic exposés. Just facts. Timeline. Screenshots. Recordings. I wrote down everything. From the first day she shut down emotionally to the night I left, to the exact minute her voicemail begged me to come back. I laid it all out with the cold precision of someone who's been gaslit one time too many. Tessa helped. Not because she was trying to take my side, but because she knew what it felt like to be rewritten in someone else's version of events. She helped me create a folder labeled Truth. And inside it was every piece of the puzzle Vivian had tried to scatter. The video, the Instagram screenshots, the messages she'd sent, even my own journal notes. And I made copies. Not out of paranoia, out of survival. Because Vivian wasn't trying to leave quietly. She was trying to erase the guilt and leave me holding the emotional debris. By that afternoon, her lawyer sent a follow-up email, clearly rattled by my last message. The tone had changed. It was less assertive, more cautious. Our client would like to de-escalate and is requesting a private discussion before any official filings. Now that was interesting. For someone so ready to accuse me, she was suddenly eager to talk things through. It felt less like compassion and more like fear. Fear that I might have just as much to say as she did. But I didn't respond right away. I waited. I wanted her to sweat a little. Not out of spite, but because I finally understood something. She didn't expect me to protect myself. She never believed I had it in me. I was supposed to be passive, soft, silent. The guy who cries in the kitchen and forgives with a whisper. She'd built her entire narrative around the idea that I wouldn't fight back. She was wrong. That night, I sat outside on the motel balcony with Tessa again. She poured 2 glasses of something local and tart and handed one to me like we were old friends living out the last night of some indie movie. We didn't talk for a long time. I think she sensed the change. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't staring at my phone, hoping for apologies. I was still, focused. When I finally broke the silence, I said something that surprised even me. I'm not afraid of losing her anymore. I'm afraid of losing myself if I let her keep the pen. Tessa nodded slowly. Then take it back. The next day, I sent one email. Direct. Short. No drama. Any conversation will be in writing. No calls. I will not meet without legal representation. And if any more false claims are made, I will submit a formal statement with evidence to your office. I expected silence. But 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, not from her. It was a message from someone I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Vivian's ex. That's when everything flipped. Again, he said, "You don't know me, but I think you and I need to talk. I know what she's doing. She did it to me, too." My blood ran cold. I'd heard stories, vague ones, back when we were dating. Vivian told me her ex had been controlling, manipulative, emotionally abusive. She painted herself as the survivor, the one who escaped. She had cried in my arms telling me how hard it had been to rebuild her life. But now, here he was, reaching out to me, not to defend himself, but to warn me. He offered to send me documents, screenshots, witness accounts from his friends. A pattern, he called it. And suddenly I realized I wasn't the first. I was just the latest. Vivian didn't just discard people. She dismantled them. And now, it was finally time to break the cycle. When I met with her ex, over video, privately, away from lawyers, everything came into focus. He didn't rant. He didn't accuse. He just showed me everything. The same playbook. The emotional withdrawal. The passive-aggressive silence. The sudden blame shifting. The carefully planted storylines she'd spun around him while slowly erasing his side of the relationship. And now she was doing it again. Only this time, with legal backup and a digital paper trail of half-truths designed to make her exit look righteous. That's when it stopped being about heartbreak for me. It became about reclaiming my name. About making sure my truth stood beside hers. Not louder. Just there. I submitted everything. Professionally. Calmly. No drama. No outbursts. Just documentation. Screenshots. Messages. The timeline. The voicemail. The video she forgot had her own voice on it. And even her ex, who had nothing to gain, wrote a signed statement, detailing what he'd been through years ago. My lawyer called me afterward and said, "She's going to back down. You flipped the script." He was right. Vivian withdrew her allegations the next day. Just like that, gone. Like they'd never been written. Suddenly, she wanted a mutual, clean split. And her tone shifted from legal firestorm to, "Maybe we can just settle this privately, amicably." I gave her exactly that. Because at that point, I didn't want to fight anymore. I wanted to be free. It's been 4 months since the paperwork was finalized. I moved into a small house 2 towns over. Quiet neighborhood. Slow mornings. The kind of life you rebuild one honest day at a time. I even got a rescue dog named Milo. Yeah, the same cat-hating guy now walks around with a goofy mutt who chews on socks and waits for me by the window every time I go out for groceries. Tessa, she stayed in town for a while. We still talk. But this isn't a love story between me and her. And that's okay. She showed me something more valuable than romance. That being seen doesn't mean being loved, and being loved doesn't always mean being treated right. Vivian sent me one final message about a month ago. Just 4 words. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply, because I am. And maybe that's the best ending of all. The kind where no one gets destroyed, no one gets exposed online, no one falls apart. Just a quiet man, rebuilding slowly, finally visible to himself again. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had someone try to erase your version of the truth, or if you've come out stronger after feeling completely invisible, share your story in the comments. What was the moment you finally felt free again? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful real-life stories right here on Reddit Confessions.